I am here with Sam Fox, and she just recently learned this, but her film "Fucking Nuts" won the best short film at the World Film Geek Awards. So I was like, we got to talk about this movie and some more stuff. So Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about everything.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And second of all, um, I really love awards. So thank you so much for like not only the major honor of the nomination, but best of 2023 is that's a good one. And yeah, I when I was 6 years old, I won the rock climbing award, the tennis award, and the oh my God, what was it? Fishing award when I was 6 at camp. And ever since then, I just love winning awards. So thank you so much.
That's awesome. So let's get to the first part. What does influence you to become a filmmaker?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, but I grew up in the mountains. So the world of Hollywood and its impact was always kind of around. There was a lot of movie ranches where I grew up because it was definitely like a very Wild West feeling area of Los Angeles. And so I definitely had that aspect. And I grew up loving Westerns because I grew up on an animal farm riding horses and all of that stuff. So there was that. And then just I grew up kind of in a very solitary environment where, on this ranch farm, kind of whatever it was, piece of land, there wasn't really any neighbors anywhere close around, and my parents were a lack of parents, and so it was just kind of me and my sister. And my sister's 8 years older, so she was kind of when I was maybe 5 in my like deep exploration adventure phase, she was 13. So she wanted to like talk to boys on the phone and I don't know, journal, do whatever 13-year-olds do, that weird stuff. So I was kind of left to my own devices, and I would just go off and dress up in some weird costume. And I had to kind of use my imagination because I didn't really know what else to do. And I spent a lot of time just wandering around using my imagination. And I think that that's a huge reason why I became very creative, because I had to create this, I had to invent a world where um, everything was okay and I wasn't alone. And and then, of course, growing up during a time where like Jurassic Park was a huge influence on me. And that came out right around that time. So it would be like running around playing Jurassic Park. And that kind of world that I created really saved me. And it's a lot of my films are all about this kind of false upside down world, uh, because that's been my reality. And I like to make films that are like that. You don't know what you're watching. You don't know if it's real. You don't know if it's fairy tale. And yeah, that's kind of what started me in the biz, I guess.
That
Well, I didn't start in the biz at 5. That
right.
would be weird. But it started my love and obsession with film.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so I grew up with I didn't grow up with just the big Hollywood A-list films. I grew up watching a lot of those B movies, like the really absurd ones, like
Right.
the really crazy ones with the nutty titles like, Raiders of the Living Dead, or, that's where I grew up with. I grew up with those crazy maniacal, only available at video store type titles. So that's what I
Yeah.
because that's what I felt like. I felt like with Fucking Nuts, it's like it felt like that type of thing I would see from the 80s that you would just rent at a video, like you would only see it at a video store. You would never see it on a big screen. And that's why
Yeah.
I loved it, because that's the era I grew up with. I love the B movies more than anything. I mean, I
Same. Well,
like,
because my sister, oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, I was saying just 'cause, I mean, I like some A-list films, but I've always been more into the B movies because that's always been my thing.
Well, they're fun. They're not, they don't take themselves too seriously, and they know that. And I really love and appreciate that about them, because here in this industry, a lot of people take themselves way too seriously, and life is insane, and you have to laugh and make fun of it. But yeah, my sister was, because she was born in 1980. She grew up in the same era, and I remember one of the earliest movies because she exposed me to things that I should not have been watching, and she thought it was very, very funny and entertaining to terrify her little sister. But little did she know, I wasn't scared. Well, I was scared of some of them, but like Basket Case was one of the
Yeah,
early ones that I was watching, and I mean, I don't know if that's supposed to be scary. I thought it was hilarious and I loved it. And there was a few. I remember The Hand That Rocks the Cradle was a big one. What was it? Night of the Living Dead was a great one.
yep,
Um, I mean, there's so during that time there was so many because they could really have fun with the practical effects. I think kind of
exactly.
Cronenberg like and John Carpenter set the tone with that, and then they just took it and went balls to the wall.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I got a situation. I was in a similar situation. My brother, I think he purposely tried to scare me, but the first one I really got into was Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And we had went to a neighbor's house to see it. Like a whole bunch of us were just watching this, and I was like 6 years old when this came out. And the scene where Freddy pops out of Jesse's body with his head just like I was not scared at all. I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. So I gotta thank my brother for that because if he tried to scare me, he failed miserably, and I ended up loving the genre after that. And I agree,
Yeah, well,
practical
if you
effects work well.
yeah, if you think about it, like at that time, at that age, you don't really you're just like, oh, that's disgusting and cool. And like little kids love that, there's comic books and video games, and it's all kind of surrounded by that over the top, disgusting form of violence. Whereas when I started to get into like the actually more psychologically, like or very, very real, like when I first saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, first saw The Shining, which were also at an age that was very, very way too young. That actually, I was like, okay, this is scary. This
Yeah.
makes this makes sense as to why this is
Yeah,
a
that
horror
now
film.
I think about it, I think that's why my mom would not let me see it at 8 years old. But I finally saw it at 12, and Texas Chainsaw is my favorite all-time favorite horror movie to this day. Because I was telling people like I see it more as a psychological horror film. It's not, everyone calls it like the genesis of the slasher film. In some ways, yes, but if you really look at it, it is more of a psychological horror film because that movie really
Yeah,
messes with you, especially the dinner scene where you get that shot of Marilyn Burns' eye, like that really close-up shot with it, where you even see the white part, and I was just like, that is just mind-blowingly sick right there.
I always joke that basically dinner with my family was like pretty much that scene. I
Really?
used to, yeah, I used to put up a picture. There's a still from that where you do see the wide and you see them all there and grandpa's there and everything. And I was like, happy holidays from the Fox family because it wasn't too far off. Like my grandma was absolutely fucking nuts. She was so off in her own. I actually saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre with her. We invited her over to watch it. She it was at my sister's house and she was sitting there watching it, just staring the whole time at the screen, never made one reaction, never jumped, didn't even blink. And the film was over and she looks around and she goes, "What a lovely apartment you have." Now she's been to my sister's apartment over and over and over for years. And that was her takeaway from the film. She's just off in fucking grandma, like opiated, whatever morphine patch world she was in. And so, yeah, whenever I would see that scene, I'm like, I familiar.
Well, I will tell you, I sadly lost my grandmother in May, but I will tell you, she was one of the best film fans I ever met because a few years ago I showed her John Wick for the first time. It was the first time she ever saw it. And then we watched John Wick 2. And I think this was like right before the third one was coming out. And after we watched both films, she looked right at me. She goes, "This is really good." She goes, "There's gonna be a third one, right?" I was just like, "It's coming out soon. How did you?" She's like, "I want to see that third one when it comes out." But
Amazing. I love that.
And yeah, and then it was another one we watched. We watched, and I watched it with my mom. We watched this movie, The Raid 2, and there's this prison fight in the film, and a guy gets his leg broken. Like the guy snaps this other guy's leg, and my mom like starts cringing, and my grandma is looking over at her, and she starts to laugh at her because of the reaction. She was laughing more at her reaction, and like, and I was just like, I looked over and I saw my grandma laughing. I couldn't help. I started laughing. The fact that my mom was cringing at that one scene, both my grandmother, I just looked at
I
each other
mean,
and started laughing at her.
those ladies, they've seen it all. If you think about, like, they lived through World War II, okay?
Yeah,
A little movie with someone getting their leg snapped, like that is nothing.
exactly.
So props to your grandma, and may she rest in peace. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was her time, but I'll say she went off with a bang. I'll say leave it at that.
I mean, there's no other way to go, I would think.
Yeah, but let's talk about fucking nuts. I mean,
Okay.
this is a movie that literally lived up to its title, and I absolutely loved every single minute of it. And so my first question is the question about it is how did you come up with this movie?
Um, this movie was written very, very early before I even knew. So my journey into the arts was, I was a fine artist, a surrealist painter, wanted to go to art school and be a painter. And I don't really know what careers painters could have at the time. So I thought maybe I'll use my artistic vision and get into the world of film. And of course, you know, as a young woman in Los Angeles, everyone's like, well, you got to be an actress. So I was like, okay, I'll go to acting classes and I'll be an actress. And I'm very I like peacocking, and I like performing. You know, growing up in a really, really crazy household, I was the court jester. So it's like, you know, I do a song and a dance, and I'm like, don't look back here at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner that's going on. Let me entertain you. So I feel like acting definitely felt right when I first got into it. But as I was doing it for a bit, and then it's like, okay, well, what do you do now? You get an agent, you get a manager. I realized that I didn't really like the show business aspect of it, and I didn't like being told what to do. And so then I kind of segued into producing, because I didn't really know what part of film I wanted to get into, but I knew that I was really good at problem solving, and I was good at multitasking, and I was good at being a therapist to a bunch of people that are complaining.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, I'm a producer. And again, I was like, okay, I'm watching these directors, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I wanted to impose my ideas on them, but I'm like, I can't. I'm supporting their vision. And all I could do was help them creatively solve their problems. And as I did that more and more, I was like, I think that's what I should do. And I started making these videos by myself, because I didn't want to try and run a crew if I didn't know what I was doing. And self-taught myself. So if people can't afford film school, you can self-teach yourself.
Yes,
Just throwing that out.
that's true.
But so yeah. So to be a director, you don't really just, people don't call you up and say like, hey Sam, I heard on the grapevine that you're a director now. Direct my film. You have to write your own
Yeah.
material. And writing was never something that I felt confident in. Uh, I my ideas are weird and bizarre, and I never really thought that anyone would enjoy them. And I thought that they were too uh I mean, to be honest, stupid to ever waste anyone's time making them and supporting them. And so I kind of was toying around with it, and I wrote this script because I thought it was funny, and I thought it felt very real to me and my experience growing up. And I wrote it a long time ago, and I, you know, read it out in a writer's workshop that I was in, and I just kind of put it to bed, and I started working on other projects. I knew that this would be, I actually tried making the costumes at home out of paper mache, and I was just like, these are so bad. I'm never going to be able to afford to make this film. Now, years later, I finally, you know, was honing in my craft and felt confident to try and do something bigger and also honest to myself. So in the time that I was making films, my father had passed away. My mother had wrote a memoir. And so I had now was given the permission to be a little bit honest about my experience growing up. And what's funny is no one really looks at this film as like a confession of childhood trauma, but that's what it is. It's my way of telling my story of how difficult it was being a teenager growing up in a family that is so alien and insane. And I just couldn't either stand to be around them, and I also could never let anyone come into that household. Um, so now I finally was able to tell my story, and that's when I revisited the script and brought it to Joe Badon in and Cosmic Family Films in New Orleans, because I knew that they had this DIY crew that could make this film for a budget that I could afford and could make it good and creative and fun and exciting. And that's exactly what they did. I couldn't have made this in LA. It would have
Yeah.
cost me
Wait.
over 50 grand more. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Joe's amazing. I met him this year as well, and his first he showed me Blood of the Dinosaurs, which was like I think I showed one of my kids this, and I'm like, and they're like, this is a messed up Mr. Rogers. Like they were like, if Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Rogers was on acid, this would be like the movie. I'm like, this is a short film.
Yeah.
Like, I loved it. I loved it. And then I finally saw the full Wheel of Heaven movie not
Yeah.
too long ago. Absolutely loved it. I mean, it was out there. So if I knew that, I think it was Joe who might have told me about you as well, and I'm like, all right, I'm definitely gonna have to see this. If fucking nuts is anything like the wheel, like what you showed me with Blood of Dinosaurs, I'm all in. I love this like this type of comedy and all that. And now hearing that it's from a personal experience, that makes even more deserving of the award I gave you, because I love the story how this girl Sandy is afraid to she's afraid of everything around her, and yet Dan is really persistent to let her meet let him meet her parents. And and kudos has to go out to the cast, Maddie Nichols and Vincent Stalba. I mean, and Vincent Stalba's great. I loved him as Uncle Bobo in The Wheel of Heaven. He was too funny in that movie,
Okay.
and he's really good here. What was it like working with those two?
I mean, a dream. Honestly, I couldn't have gotten luckier with literally everyone. I mean, the only problems were, on-set problems like losing a lot of footage and unplanned thunderstorms, which, that comes with the territory of filmmaking.
Mhm.
I got so lucky with my casting crew. So I'll start with Maddie and Vince. Originally, the script was written for a girl who I grew up with, who I knew that she had come from a similar difficult upbringing with her family, also a child of an addicted parent. And she had this amazing face that looked like she was 12, but she was, in her 20s, and these eyes that they just told this story that was so contradictory to her soft features. And I just was obsessed with that. I'm like, this is a girl who, when you look at her, she looks like a child that's been in so much pain, and she's got that innocence but that pain, and I love the dichotomy of the two together. And so instantly I was like, this is someone who I want to portray me as, because this basically Sandy is a version of me, as all characters are. And when she couldn't do the project because she was signed on to Gen Z, I I didn't really know where to go because I knew exactly what I wanted. And Vince came onto the project actually when I was touring. This is why it's so good to go to film festivals if your film gets into festivals.
Yeah.
Joe and I originally met through I think Another Hole in the Head in San Francisco. And so Vince, I'd seen Blood of the Dinosaurs over and over and over because we were touring that with my last film, Bad Acid, together through the 2022 genre circuit. And I saw Vince's Uncle Bobo, and I was like, this guy, I knew that Dan had to be someone who was could do like a very grounded version of extremely over the top, which kind of was what Uncle Bobo was. And
Exactly.
yeah, and had this like intensity in his character, but it could also come off as like a charm. You know, he is very charming and sweet and put together, but you can see that intensity in him, and he has it in his work ethic and how he works as a, because he was a producer on this film too. And so he was so perfect, and we were talking because of he really wanted me and Joe to actually meet in person because we'd only been talking over Facebook Messenger. So when we finally did meet, I was like, Vince, you are Dan. And he helped me find Maddie Nichols because she was a New Orleans local hire. And I just saw her and instantly I'm like, that's her. And so I knew that both of them fit the part, but then upon working with them and seeing how dedicated they were, you know, anything I asked them to do, and because I came from an acting background, I always want to make sure the actors are get to do their version of what I want because I'm very controlling. But I'm like, this is what it is. Now I want to hear what your interpretation is. And also it's a very personal story to me. So I'm allowed to be controlling on this one. And so they brought incredibly unique choices to what I asked them to give me. And they just, anything I asked them, I was like, you know, if you feel comfortable, and they did that plus 100%, you know, the stuff that Vince has to do with the special effects makeup and all that, he was not comfortable. Like we had to reshoot that scene too, because that was the scene that we lost.
Oh,
And he was on the ground kind of basically, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but having his reaction to the family
yeah.
for hours. And the poor guy was like honestly killing himself. Um, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry. Like, are you okay? Are you okay? He's like, I'm fine, Sam. And same with Maddie, like the stuff that, you know, I remember before she throws up, we'd put this disgusting stuff in her mouth. And then something happened before we called action where there was like a conversation, a side conversation, and minutes are going by, and Maddie's just, you know, standing there with like this disgusting mix of oatmeal, food coloring, like strawberry yogurt, and she's not saying anything, she's not spitting it out, she's just ready to go. And I look at her and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, Maddie, can we roll? So, you know, it's a dream to work with actors like that. And then William and Michelle, who play the parents, again, like they are having to act in roles where they don't get the, you know, the joy of having this on screen, which is what a lot of actors, you know, really want, is their face and their facial expressions and their voices and all of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that they came and gave me, you know, so much energy and effort, and we're shooting overnight, and you know, they're driving an hour outside of New Orleans, and again having to reshoot that scene over with these really, you know, big costumes where they're blind, they can't see. And Michelle's got a cigarette, a lit cigarette, and a martini, which she is balancing in that giant costume. um I mean, I could not ask for anything better.
Yeah. And then you had the neighbor played by Christopher Rydell. And I'm sorry to do that.
Yes.
That guy's legend. I mean, I just,
So he,
yeah, I actually watched one of his old films just a few weeks ago. It was with Side Out, where the volleyball movie. And remember he was in this movie. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember he was in Fck'n Nuts. That's like awesome.
oh my god, amazing. Yeah, he's actually a very good friend of mine. And I did want to have, I wish I could have brought him on set. If I would have, if I could have, I would have. But yeah, that moment was I basically live on a walkway, and I have this like 5 pound chihuahua who's the most beautiful, fluffy, adorable thing. But God, is she vicious when she thinks that like she's kind of behind in my patio, so no one can get to her. So she thinks that like she's 150 pounds. And anytime someone walks down by with a big dog, she just goes out there and starts barking like insane. And you just hear me from the other room going, oops, shut the fuck up. Oops. And sometimes I look and I see neighbors walking by, just looking in at me like, who is this psychopath that lives in there with this crazy dog? And and when I wanted to create this break in the scene after this big moment of him telling her, I love you, instantly I was like, oh, I gotta do that moment, because I just find it so funny of this voice just echoing, this faceless voice. Um, so it was great because I could have him come in and do voiceover when I got back to LA.
That was pretty, yeah, that was pretty much easy. I need to see Bad Acid. That's the one I gotta check out for sure. What's this one
Well,
about? What's this one about for anyone who hasn't seen it?
I can you know the director, so I can send it your way. Bad Acid is it was basically the production designer that I worked with on Bad Acid and my original film, my first short, Unagi. Um, Also, very, very good friend of mine, is a uh, just a creative genius in everything she does. Now she's doing home interiors, but before she was a fashion designer. And I just approached her. Her name's Candace, and I was like, Candace, I would love to make a um, a fashion film for your next release. And her next release was called Bad Acid, and it was this really cool kind of 80s bodysuits, leggings, all of that kind of 80s workout clothes, but for the club. And she was into it because she loves, being on set and doing the production design and also doing the styling. And she was down, and I told her, I will split a budget with you. And then as we started thinking, and of course the project grows as it does, I said to her, I'm like, look, this is going to end up costing us like a pretty penny. So, oh, here you can see my vicious chihuahua, because she wants to. This is Oops. And she is a beast. Um, I told her, I'm like, we have to do something more with this film. We have to turn it into a short film. So that's when it grew into this idea of this girl who's like the most popular girl in school. Her name is Sheila, and she's a real narcissistic bitch. And you find out from the backstory that she was basically teased her whole life for being overweight and not beautiful. And so she grows up to be this kind of fitness, beautiful legend, 80s icon, Suzanne Summers or Jane Fonda style. And she watches this workout video. So the John Flexi is his workouts are called aerobisexy. And it's all very sexualized and silly and over the top. And she watches this religiously, and he's kind of like a cult figure in the workout community. And one day she kind of knocks over some of her toxic hair gel, and it spills into her tab soda. And because she's not aware of anything that's going on around her, because she's so self-involved, she drinks it and goes on this psychedelic trip into her worst nightmare, a bad acid trip, basically, where she kind of goes into John Flexi's TV cult world. And at first, it's amazing because she's the star of Aerobisexy Volume 14. But then, of course, as bad acid trips go, it turns on her. And it's just fun. It's almost like a short film, music video, fashion film, but it's just plain old fun, colorful, wild. Yeah, well, joy to make as well. I've been really
Yeah,
lucky. The stuff I've made has been just just a joy.
I love it. That's what I love. I love filmmakers who just love to make films that no matter, like, doesn't, who cares what everyone else thinks, do it for you just do it
Yeah.
for the fun of it. Perfect example. There's a filmmaker out of Louisiana named Paul Dale. He makes films for like 3 to 5 days, gets all his friends in these movies, and they're the most ridiculous horror film, like horror comedy like things. So he's got films like Sewer Gators. He told me about film Killer Kites, or like kites are actually attacking people. I watch these films. I was like, he just loves making these films just for the fun of it. He doesn't care if people think it's bad. Like this is what his intention is, and like it's absolutely what I love about these films. Like it's just you love to do it. It's your passion. Don't let anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like for people like that, at least I know for myself, I've really, really pondered on it, because I've worked very, very hard, and I've, you know, slowly climbed the ladder a bit, but I'm not making any money. And, you know, I don't have representation, and I've been putting in a lot of legwork. And I think about it and I'm like, why am I doing this? Because it's also soul crushing, because you do, you know, when you try and get into the feature world and you've got these features that require someone else to fund because they are, you know, in the upper
Mhm.
budgets of $1 to $3 million. Um,
Then they're
and
always gonna.
you're yeah, you're working so hard and you're pitching and no one responds, or they respond and say it's not for me. And or maybe they're interested and then you send them the deck or the script and then they don't like it, and it's really, really hard. And that's the part of the business where I'm like, that's the brutal part, because I love making the movies, but this part before and after is very difficult, and I'm not going to lie about that. But it's the only thing I can do. Like, I really can't do anything else, which I'm not trying to undersell myself. Like, I've kind of tried. I am a suffering artist, and I will suffer as long as I have to be able to put my visual imprint on the world, because that's my way of expressing myself. I've never been able to express myself through words. It's through a visual medium. And if I can't do that, then life ain't worth living.
You're right, exactly. And then there's filmmakers out there, they'll make one film and then, they don't know what's gonna happen next. Um, who knows? But they still want to get that second film out. You never know, right?
Yeah.
Got one in mind. A friend of mine, actually, she did a film 4 years ago. She actually released her first feature film. She financed it herself. She went through all the rigors of everything, like bad, like wrong. But I will tell you, the final film actually came out really good, and it's an homage to her all-time icon, her all-time idol. Her name is Allie Lucas. She did a film called Catherine Upside Down. It's her love letter to John Hughes. And so
Oh,
and I saw it, and first time I saw it, I'm like, I was having a bad day and I watched it and I laughed my butt off through it. And then I got in touch with her and we started talking about it. And to this day, I tell her, like, you did this great love letter to John Hughes. I even picked out references from certain films that even she didn't realize. She just, now that you think about it, yeah, that does sound like it could have been from a John Hughes movie. And, like it could have been inspired by that. But I didn't realize that. But yeah, she went through the trials and tribulations of making a feature film, but she finally succeeded, and I think it got released a couple of years, like 2019 it came out, and she's still trying to make a second film. She actually sent me the script for her second film just to see if I would like it, and it's a Christmas movie, and it's also in the vein of John Hughes. And I read it and I laughed my butt off, like, I hope one day she makes this movie and that she'll get to do it, because this is really the script was hysterical. I was laughing from cover to cover. So,
well, a Christmas movie always does well, but yeah, I wish
as
more
long as
people that weren't.
as long as it's not a
Oh,
Hallmark
I was
movie, because they're the same thing.
exactly a John Hughes style Christmas movie. I'm sold. But yeah, I wish more people that weren't in our business knew about, what we go through to try and get these films made, because I've had conversations with people, I'm not going to name names, where I'm like, oh, you should check out this film. Like, I've seen it on the circuit. You can now do a VOD. It's amazing. And they write me back and they're like, oh, it's $3.99 to rent. And I'm like, you have no idea what these filmmakers went through to try and get this made.
Yeah,
Like, give them your $3.99. Give them the price of like half a latte
exactly.
to watch this beautiful piece of art that they created for your entertainment. Um, People need to know how hard it is, because independent filmmakers need to be celebrated, because we are all sick of blockbusters. And if it weren't for us, then we would not have any of that other middle tier and lower tier content. So
Exactly.
I
That's
was
why, yeah,
we're an indie filmmaker.
that's why my World Film Geek Awards mainly, like, I may have the occasional blockbuster as a nominee, but I mostly focus on indies and even global cinema, because I feel like there are films from countries out there that don't get enough recognition as they should. And I've this year, like the last couple of years, I've met filmmakers and actors from South Africa, and I started watching these films, and I'm going, why are we not getting these in the United States? They deserve more. These are great movies. They need to get more, like recognition like worldwide, and they're not, because they stick to not just their country. And of course, people might be turned off by the fact that there's these different languages, who knows? But the fact is, these are really good films, and I think people need to check these out. Like this year I saw a new version of 1984 from Russia and Finland that was like
Wow.
mind-blowingly amazing. And this one, and it's also another female filmmaker, Diana Ringo. She did everything. She directed it, she wrote it, she produced it, she composed the music, she did all the visual effects, and it still came out like I just saw.
Wow.
I was this was amazing. Like, and I'm
Oh,
like, you guys can, I was like, guys, spend the 4.99 to rent this movie. You got to see the hard work she put into this movie. Like, seriously.
what did you watch it on?
Amazon Prime, and she sent me a screener, but
Okay.
it's on Amazon Prime. But
Okay, everyone, Amazon Prime. I'm going to be renting it. I mean, I love 1984 was one of the first books that I read that really fundamentally messed my shit up
yeah,
because I was like, whoa, this is some heavy. I think I was maybe 13, and I was like, oh wow, there is a style of outside thinking that is so real that it's terrifying.
yeah,
And then I fell deep into like the Orwell and Kurt Vonnegut and all those kind of post World War II
yeah.
science fiction.
And I was like, I saw this like when she sent me the screener. I watched it. I'm like, my mouth was dropping. I'm like, and the fact that she did all the visual effects and they actually look pretty good for an indie film. I'm going, why? I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is like better than half the, like, some of the blockbusters have these really bad special effects, and like this one, these are so much better than what I saw. And she's even in the film. She's the female lead in the film too. So if you do see it, you'll see her in the film.
Wow. Well, props to Diana because that's pretty incredible. I mean, directing, producing, writing is hard enough, but to also be acting in it,
And
I
yeah,
I tried that.
she composed the score because she's a classically trained musician, and she did all the visual effects. I'm going, what is it she can't do? Like, that's just insane.
She's making me look lazy.
Yeah, she's really hardworking. I know that because I saw her first quarantine earlier this year, and that was pretty good too. And that was quite fascinating. So it's quite interesting. And then yeah, the whole movie. She's from Finland, but she shot the movie in Russian, so it has that. So
Cool.
it's definitely worth checking out.
Okay, I will do it. I will do it this week.
Awesome. So are there any or what's is there any new projects for you that you're working on that you can talk about?
Yeah, actually, I'm just in the second draft of the Blue Diamond, which is the upcoming short coming from myself and Desiree Staples, who have basically been working together for the last few years and will work together until the end of our lives. Um, Addison Hyman is writing that, and he wrote Hypochondriac,
Yep,
which is a film that,
good movie.
yeah, XYZ.
I actually interviewed him for that movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
we love Addison, and he is just so good, and he really understands the way of connecting childhood trauma with this kind of horror that I like to make, and so this one is really going a bit deeper into my narcissistic father. The character is going to be a mother, a narcissistic mother, but this is my expression of like all the things that I've wanted to say of this feeling of like having he passed away, but having this kind of overbearing weight to always do better and always do good, and you're never good enough, and how that never goes away, and it will be part of me for the rest of my life. So it's a kind of science fiction way of exploring that, science fiction horror comedy. And that's going to be filmed in Big Bear in March, and it's really cool. It's basically about a narcissistic mother who abandons her daughter, which will be played by Desiree Staples, who's also a brilliant actress. And she runs away to a place called Bear Creek to open up a 80s themed après ski club. And you find out a little bit more about this 80s themed après ski club and what they're up to. And it's some pretty sinister stuff. And that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be a short, which we're trying to tour then next year, hit all the festivals that we hit this year. Plus, I didn't get into Fright Fest and Sitges, and there's a few other of the genre fest that I'm like, I need to be ticking all of these off the box if I'm ever going to feel like I'm a success. And while we're pitching Moonchild, which is my first feature, and that's about and set in New Orleans about a street artist there who gets indoctrinated into this this cult of Dionysian artists who work for this art collector, and it's good. It explores the occult, and it's very, very dark. That'll be less comedy and more twisted exploration into Satan.
Awesome. I'm gonna check those out when they're ready. I'm definitely looking out for those.
Yeah. Well, we'll be having the Blue Diamond for sure coming your way this late summer. And Moonchild, you know, all we need is 3 million. So
There you go.
we shall see.
All right, fingers crossed. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Let's keep our fingers
yeah,
crossed. Well,
yeah.
this has been a great chat, and guys, I gotta tell you, man, Fck'n Nuts deserved the best short film award of 2023 at the World Film Geek Awards. Sam, you've been great to talk to. I cannot wait to see more of your stuff. You totally deserve this award. This is mind-blowingly amazing that you came up with this film. And like I said, I cannot wait to see more of your work. And yeah, that's it. Yeah. So
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's so validating to be validated. This is why I do this is why I suffer every day is for moments like this. And it really, like, moments like this are what are going to keep me going for the next year until this happens again. And it's just that little serotonin dopamine up boost that will drive the force through. So thank you so much. And it was really great chatting with you too.
all right. Well, y'all don't forget, check out worldfilmgeek.com. There's interviews, reviews, features, and more. And until then, you all take care and you have a great day.